The autumn wind cut through the Montana plains like a blade, carrying with it the scent of sagebrush and distant rain. Emma Whitmore stood at the edge of the settlement, her pale hands gripping the weathered fence post until her knuckles turned white. She didn't feel the cold anymore. She didn't feel much of anything these days. 3 months had passed since the fever took her daughter. 2 months since her husband followed, unable to bear the grief. The doctor said it was his heart, but Emma knew better. Hearts could break just as surely as bones, and his had shattered the moment they lowered little Sarah into the ground. Now Emma was alone in a land that had promised her everything and delivered only loss. The settlement women whispered about her. They saw how she wandered at night, how she forgot to eat, how her dresses hung loose on her thinning frame. Mrs. Henderson had tried to help at first, bringing soup and bread, but Emma couldn't taste it. Food turned to ash in her mouth. Sleep brought only nightmares. Every morning she woke surprised to find herself still breathing, still trapped in a world that had become unbearable. She had written the letter to her sister in Boston 3 times, each version shorter than the last. There was nothing left to say. She planned to mail it tomorrow, and then she would walk into the mountains. The snow would come soon. It would be peaceful, she thought. Quiet. An end to the endless aching emptiness that consumed her. But tonight, something changed. A commotion rippled through the settlement as riders approached. Emma barely glanced up until she heard Mrs. Henderson's excited voice calling her name. A Lakota hunting party had arrived, led by their chief, seeking trade and offering the settlement fresh game in exchange for supplies they needed for the coming winter. Emma had seen natives before from a distance, but never this close. The chief dismounted with fluid grace, and even in her numbness, something about him commanded attention. He was tall and powerfully built, with long black hair that fell past his shoulders and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of generations. He wore traditional clothing adorned with intricate beadwork, and carried himself with a dignity that made the settlement men look small and clumsy by comparison. His name was Takakota, Mrs. Henderson whispered, which meant friend to all. The other women hung back, uncertain and afraid, but Emma felt nothing. Not fear, not curiosity. Just the same hollow emptiness that had become her constant companion. Takota's gaze swept across the gathered settlers, assessing, calculating. Then his eyes found Emma, and something shifted in his expression. He stared at her with an intensity that should have made her uncomfortable, but she was beyond caring. Let him stare. Let the whole world stare. What did it matter? But Takakota wasn't staring with curiosity or contempt. His eyes held something else entirely, something she couldn't name. Recognition, perhaps. Or understanding. He spoke quietly to the man beside him, never breaking eye contact with Emma, and she felt a strange warmth bloom in her chest. Not hope, certainly not that, but something. A crack in the ice that had frozen her heart. The chief concluded his business with the settlement leaders quickly, trading venison and elk for flour, coffee, and metal tools. But before he left, he approached Emma directly. The other women gasped and stepped back, but Emma stood still. She had nothing left to lose. Takakota studied her face for a long moment, and Emma saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Sadness. Deep, ancient sadness that mirrored her own. He knew. Somehow, this stranger knew exactly what lived inside her, the darkness that threatened to consume her completely. He spoke then, his English heavily accented but clear. You walk with ghosts, he said simply. They pull you toward the spirit world. I have seen this before. It is a dangerous path. Emma wanted to laugh, to tell him it was none of his concern, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, tears filled her eyes for the first time in weeks. Real tears, hot and painful, breaking through the numbness like spring water through ice. Takakota nodded slowly, as if she had spoken. I will return, he said, and it sounded like a promise. Then he mounted his horse and rode away, leaving Emma standing in the dust, touching her wet cheeks in wonder. Takakota returned 3 days later, alone this time, riding into the settlement at dawn when the mist still clung to the ground like ancestral spirits. Emma had not slept. She had spent 3 nights replaying their brief encounter, trying to understand why a stranger's words had pierced the armor of her grief when nothing else could. She stood on her porch as he approached, her heart beating faster than it had in months. He dismounted and walked toward her with purpose, carrying a leather pouch decorated with quillwork. The settlement was stirring now, and Emma could feel eyes watching from behind curtained windows. Let them watch. Let them judge. She had stopped caring about propriety the day she buried her family. You are worse, Takakota said without preamble, his dark eyes searching her face. The ghosts have pulled you deeper. You have not eaten. You have not slept. You are choosing death. Emma's throat tightened. No one else had said it so plainly. They all danced around it with concerned whispers and worried glances, but this man, this stranger, simply spoke the truth. "Why do you care?" she asked, her voice rough from disuse. "Because I know this path," he replied. "I have walked it myself. 5 winters ago, my wife and son were killed in a raid. I wanted to follow them into the spirit world. My people saw me fading, becoming a ghost among the living. My grandmother, a medicine woman, would not let me go. She forced me to live when I wanted to die. She taught me that sometimes the greatest courage is not in dying for those we love, but in living without them." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. She sank onto the porch steps, her legs suddenly unable to support her. Takakota sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance, but his presence was solid and warm in a way nothing had been since the fever came. "I am a chief, but I am also a healer," he continued. "My grandmother taught me the medicine ways before she joined the ancestors. I know the herbs that calm troubled spirits and the ceremonies that ease grief's burden. But more than this, I know the heart that has been broken and refuses to mend. I see it in you as clearly as if you had spoken your pain aloud." Emma turned to face him fully for the first time. In the pale morning light, she could see the lines around his eyes, the silver threads beginning to show in his dark hair. He was perhaps 40 winters, old enough to have lived and lost, young enough to carry the weight of it in his bearing. "Why would you help me? I'm nothing to you. Just another white settler who came and took your land." Takota's expression didn't change. "My grandmother taught me that suffering knows no color. Pain does not choose based on the shade of skin or the language of tongue. You are a human being in agony, and I am a healer. That is enough." He opened a leather pouch and removed several bundles of dried herbs. "This is sage for clearing the spirit. This is sweetgrass for peace. This is cedar for protection and strength. You will brew them together each morning and evening. You will drink while the sun rises and sets, and you will speak to your daughter and husband. Tell them everything you hold inside. Release the words into the smoke." Emma's hands shook as she accepted the herbs. "I can't pay you. I have nothing left." "I ask no payment," Takakota said. "But I make you a promise. I will return each day until you choose to live. Until the light returns to your eyes and you no longer walk so close to the edge of the spirit world. This is my oath to you, and I do not break my word." For the first time in months, Emma felt something other than despair. It wasn't hope exactly, but it was awareness. She was aware of the warmth of the sun on her face, the earthy scent of the herbs in her hands, the steady presence of this unexpected ally. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. Takakota stood, tall and solid as a mountain. "You can. You have survived the worst pain a mother can know. You have endured the loss of your partner. You are stronger than you believe, Emma Whitmore. I see this strength in you even if you cannot see it yourself. I will hold the vision of your healing until you are ready to hold it for yourself." He mounted his horse but paused before leaving. "Brew the herbs tonight. Speak to your daughter in the smoke. Tell her you are trying to find your way back to the living. She would want this for you. The dead always want the living to continue, to find joy again, to honor their memory by refusing to surrender to darkness." Emma watched him ride away, clutching the herbs to her chest. For the first time since the fever took everything, she felt a tiny spark of possibility. Not happiness, not even comfort, but the faint suggestion that perhaps total darkness wasn't inevitable. Perhaps there was another way forward, one she couldn't yet see but that this Lakota chief seemed to know with absolute certainty existed. True to his word, Takakota came every day. At first, the settlement buzzed with scandal. A native chief visiting a widow daily was improper, dangerous, inappropriate. Mrs. Henderson tried to intervene, speaking of reputation and propriety, but Emma had passed beyond caring what others thought. For the first time in months, she had something to live for, even if it was simply the anticipation of his arrival each dawn. The herbs helped. Each morning and evening, Emma brewed them as instructed, watching the fragrant smoke curl toward the ceiling. At first, speaking to Sarah and Thomas felt foolish, even painful, but Takakota insisted. "The words you hold inside become poison," he explained. "Release them into the smoke. Let the ancestors carry your grief to the spirit world where it can be transformed." So Emma spoke. She told Sarah about the guilt that consumed her, how she believed she should have somehow prevented the fever, should have been a better mother, should have protected her child. She confessed to Thomas her anger at him for leaving, for choosing death over living with the pain. The words came in torrents, raw and jagged, tearing her open, but afterward she felt lighter, as if each confession removed a stone from the weight crushing her chest. Takakota brought more than herbs. He brought stories. He told Emma about his son, Little Wolf, who had been only 6 winters when he died. He loved horses, Takakota said one morning, his voice distant with memory. He would follow the herds for hours, studying their movements, learning their language. He was going to be a great horseman. Now he rides in the spirit world, and I must live with only memories. How do you bear it? Emma asked. They sat on her porch in the cool morning air, 2 souls bound by shared loss. I bear it by living well, Takakota replied. By honoring his memory through my actions. By being the man he believed I was. Some days this is easier than others. Some days the grief returns like a winter storm, sudden and brutal. But I have learned that grief and love are 2 sides of the same stone. I grieve because I love deeply. This is not weakness. It is proof of what was precious. Emma absorbed his words like parched earth drinking rain. No one else had spoken to her this way. The settlement women offered platitudes about God's will and heaven's plan, but Takakota spoke of practical survival, of choosing each day to continue despite the pain. It was harder than accepting meaningless comfort, but it was also real. As weeks passed, subtle changes emerged. Emma began eating again, small amounts at first, then more. She started tending her garden, finding odd comfort in the routine of pulling weeds and watering plants. She noticed the sunset one evening and realized it was beautiful. The recognition startled her. Beauty still existed in the world, even though Sarah and Thomas were gone. Takakota noticed too. Your spirit is returning, he said one morning. The ghosts no longer pull so strongly. You are choosing life, even if you do not realize it yet. But with returning life came complicated feelings. Emma found herself looking forward to Takota's visits with an intensity that confused her. She began waking before dawn, brewing coffee for both of them, arranging her hair. When he was delayed by a storm, she felt genuine worry. When he arrived the next day, apologizing for his absence, she felt relief so profound it frightened her. The settlement noticed too. The whispers grew louder, more condemning. Emma Whitmore was entertaining a savage, spending time alone with him, betraying her dead husband's memory. Mrs. Henderson finally confronted her directly. This is unseemly, Emma. What would Thomas think? What would your daughter think? Emma met her gaze steadily. Thomas would want me to live. Sarah would want her mother to find joy again. Takakota has saved my life when everyone else just watched me fade. I will not apologize for that. But doubt crept in anyway. Was she betraying her family? Was her growing attachment to Takakota wrong? The grief was still there, would always be there, but now it was joined by something else. Gratitude, certainly. Respect, absolutely. But also something warmer, something that made her heart race when she saw him approaching, something that felt dangerously like affection. Takakota sensed her turmoil. You feel guilt, he observed one morning. You believe caring for another dishonours those who came before. This is false. Your husband and daughter live in your memory. Nothing can change what you shared with them. But you are still here, still alive, still walking the earth. You are allowed to feel joy again. You are allowed to connect with another soul. This does not erase what was. It simply means you are healing. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I'm afraid, she whispered. Afraid of feeling something for you when I should still be mourning them. Afraid of caring again when caring leads to loss. Afraid of everything. Takakota reached out slowly and took her hand. His palm was warm and calloused, solid and real. Fear is natural, he said. But isolation is not the answer. We heal through connection, through allowing others to see our broken places and accepting their help in mending them. You have been brave enough to let me help you. That is already a great victory. Winter came early that year, sweeping across the Montana plains with fierce determination. The settlement prepared for months of isolation, stocking supplies and reinforcing shelters. Emma watched the preparations with a mixture of dread and anticipation. When the heavy snows came, Takota's daily visits would end. He would return to his people in the mountains, and she would face the long winter alone. The thought filled her with unexpected anguish. Somewhere during these weeks of herbs and stories and quiet companionship, Takakota had become essential to her healing. More than essential, if she was honest with herself. She had fallen in love with him, slowly and inevitably, like ice melting in spring. She loved his steadiness, his wisdom, the way he spoke of grief without flinching. She loved his hands, strong and gentle, and his eyes that saw through her defenses to the broken woman beneath. She loved him, and the realization terrified her. The first serious snow fell on a Tuesday morning. Emma stood at her window, watching the white flakes blanket the world, knowing this might be Takota's last visit until spring. When he arrived, riding through the thickening storm, her heart clenched with emotions she had thought dead forever. They sat inside for the first time, the impropriety be damned. Emma had lit a fire, and the small house felt warm and intimate. Takakota removed his heavy fur cloak, and Emma brought him coffee, their fingers brushing as he took the cup. The touch sent electricity through her, and from the way his eyes darkened, he felt it too. The snows will close the mountain passes soon, Takakota said quietly. This may be my last visit until the thaw. I know. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. Months without seeing him stretched ahead like a vast emptiness. She had survived losing her family. She wasn't sure she could survive losing him too. Takakota set down his cup and turned to face her fully. Emma Whitmore, I must speak truth to you. When I first saw you, I saw a woman choosing death. I came to help because it is my way, because my grandmother taught me to ease suffering where I find it. But something unexpected happened. I returned each day not only because I had made a promise, but because I wanted to see you. Because your healing became precious to me. Because somewhere in these weeks, you entered my heart. Emma's breath caught. She had imagined this moment in secret, late at night, but had never believed it could be real. Takakota, He raised a hand gently. Let me finish. I loved my wife deeply. Her death nearly destroyed me. I thought I would never open my heart again, never allow another person inside the walls I built around my grief. But you broke through those walls without trying. Your courage, your honesty, the way you fought your way back from the edge of death, all of it touched me in ways I did not expect and could not prevent. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I love you, she said, the words escaping before she could stop them. I know it's wrong, I know it's too soon, I know all the reasons it's impossible, but I love you. You saved my life, yes, but more than that, you reminded me what it feels like to want to live. To want tomorrow. To want joy. Takakota stood and crossed to her, taking both her hands in his. It is not wrong. It is not too soon. Love has its own timing, its own wisdom. My grandmother used to say that the heart knows truths the mind cannot understand. My heart knows you, Emma. It recognizes you as surely as the earth recognizes rain. But the differences between us, Emma protested weakly. Your people, my people, the settlement will never accept. I am a chief, Takakota interrupted firmly. I lead my people, but I do not let them dictate my heart. And you have already shown you do not bow to the settlement's judgment. The question is not what others will accept. The question is what we choose for ourselves. Emma's tears fell freely now. I choose you, she whispered. If you'll have me. If it's possible. I choose you and whatever life we can build together. Takakota pulled her close, wrapping her in his arms, and Emma felt safe for the first time since the fever came. She felt alive, protected, cherished. His embrace was strong and sure, and she let herself lean into it, accepting the gift of his strength while knowing she had her own strength too. They had both survived loss that should have destroyed them. Together, they could survive anything. Come with me, Takakota said against her hair. Before the passes close. Come to my village, meet my people, see if you can make a life in our world. I cannot promise it will be easy. There will be challenges, adjustments, those who doubt and disapprove. But I promise I will honor you, protect you, love you every day of my life. I promise to be worthy of the gift you are offering me. Emma pulled back to look at his face. What about my home? My memories? Bring them with you, Takakota said simply. Your daughter and husband will always be part of you. I do not ask you to forget them or leave them behind. I only ask that you make room in your heart for new memories alongside the old. For new love that does not diminish what came before but adds to the sum of your life. Emma thought of the empty house behind her, the grave markers on the hill, the settlement women who whispered and judged. Then she thought of Takota's steady presence, his healing wisdom, the future he offered. A future where she could honor her past while embracing something new. A future where love existed not despite loss but because of it, because they both understood preciousness and fragility and the courage required to open wounded hearts again. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll come with you. I choose life. I choose love. I choose you. The journey to Takota's village took 3 days through snow and wind that would have terrified Emma months ago. Now, wrapped in furs and riding close beside Takakota, she felt only anticipation. She had packed few possessions, taking only what mattered most, her daughter's favorite doll, her wedding ring on a chain, and the bundle of herbs Takakota had first given her. Everything else she left behind without regret. The village sat in a protected valley, a collection of teepees arranged in careful circles, smoke rising from cooking fires into the gray winter sky. As they approached, people emerged to greet their returning chief, their curious eyes finding Emma immediately. She felt their assessment, their uncertainty, but also their respect for Takakota. If their chief had brought this white woman home, there must be good reason. Takota's grandmother, Grey Dove, was ancient and wise, her face a map of years lived fully. She studied Emma with sharp black eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. Then she smiled, revealing gaps in her teeth, and spoke rapidly in Lakota. Takakota translated, "She says you have the eyes of one who has walked through fire and emerged stronger. She says you will do well here if you are willing to learn. She says the spirits told her I would bring home a woman with a broken heart and strong spirit. She has been waiting for you." Emma bowed respectfully, and Grey Dove cackled with delight, patting her cheek with a gnarled hand. The old woman led them to a teepee that had been prepared, fresh furs on the floor, a fire already burning. "My grandmother says this is now your home," Takakota explained. "She says take time to rest from your journey, and tomorrow the women will begin teaching you our ways." The following weeks were challenging but rewarding. Emma learned to dress in traditional clothing, to help with the endless work of winter survival, to speak basic Lakota phrases. The women were initially cautious but gradually accepted her, especially when they saw how Takota's eyes followed her, how he smiled more than he had in years, how he had returned to fully living instead of merely existing. Grey Dove took particular interest in Emma, teaching her healing herbs and ceremonies. "You have medicine woman spirit," she said through Takota's translation. "You understand suffering, so you can ease it in others. This is gift born from your pain." Emma had never considered using her grief this way, transforming it into something that could help others. But as she learned from Grey Dove, she discovered purpose beyond her own healing. She helped treat winter coughs, brew pain-relieving teas, sit with those who mourned. Her own losses became bridges to connect with others in their darkest moments. Spring came slowly, then all at once. The snow melted, revealing new grass and wildflowers. The village celebrated with ceremonies and dancing, and Emma found herself swept up in the joy. She danced with the other women, laughed at jokes she was beginning to understand, felt truly part of something larger than herself. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant oranges and purples, Takakota took her hand and led her to a hill overlooking the valley. "I have something to ask you," he said, his voice serious but his eyes warm. "By my people's customs, if a man wishes to take a woman as his wife, he must bring gifts to her family and prove his worthiness. You have no family here to receive gifts, so I ask you directly. Emma Whitmore, will you become my wife? Will you walk beside me for all the days we are given? Will you build a life with me, honoring both our pasts while creating a future together?" Emma's heart swelled with emotions she had thought lost forever. Joy, love, hope, gratitude, all flooding through her in a wave that left her breathless. "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at once. "Yes, Takakota. 1,000 times yes." They married in the traditional Lakota way, with Grey Dove performing the ceremony. Emma wore a dress of white doeskin adorned with intricate beadwork that the village women had made for her. Takakota wore his finest clothing, his pride and love evident in every gesture. They stood before the gathered people and made promises of partnership, respect, and devotion. Emma felt Sarah and Thomas present too, not as ghosts pulling her toward death, but as loving spirits witnessing her rebirth into joy. The celebration lasted 3 days, with feasting and dancing and stories shared around fires. Emma learned that she was now considered part of the people, her past accepted, her future welcomed. She had not just married Takakota, she had married into a community that would support and sustain them both. Months turned to years. Emma became fully fluent in Lakota, became a respected healer under Grey Dove's guidance, became a mother to the children Takota's sister had adopted after their parents died. She never forgot Sarah or Thomas. Their memories lived in her heart, cherished and honored, but no longer sources of unbearable pain. They had become part of her story, the chapter that led her to this unexpected life. One evening, many years later, Emma sat with Grey Dove outside the old woman's teepee. "You saved me," Emma said in Lakota. "You and Takakota pulled me back from death." Grey Dove shook her head. "You saved yourself. We only showed you the path. You chose to walk it. Never forget your own strength, granddaughter. You survived what should have destroyed you. You opened your heart again when it would have been easier to keep it closed. You crossed between two worlds and made a place for yourself. This is courage of highest kind." Emma watched Takakota playing with the children, his laughter carrying on the wind. He caught her eye and smiled, the same smile that had first broken through her grief years ago. Her heart still caught when she saw him, still flooded with gratitude for the day he had recognized her pain and refused to let her surrender to it. She had been a broken woman who had given up, and a Lakota chief had healed her through patience, wisdom, and persistent care. But more than healing her, he had loved her. And she had found the courage to love again, to risk her heart again, to believe in joy again. Now she had everything that mattered: purpose, community, love, and a future full of possibility. She had been given a second chance at life, and she had seized it with both hands, transforming tragedy into triumph, loss into love, despair into hope. Emma stood and walked to join her husband and their children, feeling Grey Dove's approving gaze on her back. She had traveled an impossible distance from that desperate woman at the fence post, but the journey had been worth every difficult step. She was home. She was loved. She was everything she needed to be, and Takakota had become her everything in return.